Welcome everyone to the 31st BDI Citizen Science Hour. It's lovely to see everyone's faces again, and yeah, I hope all of you are really looking forward to spending an evening learning again as a part of this community. And we're very fortunate to have as our speaker this evening a familiar face and BDI Research Associate Ryan Tippett. Many members of the citizen science community will know Ryan either from BioBashes or from his role on quite a few project ID panels for the virtual museum. Ryan is a field guide by training. He spent 20 years serving as both a guide and a guide instructor, and he's also a very enthusiastic citizen scientist. Ryan's collection of records in the virtual museum is now closing in on 14,000, I think. I checked this morning. And they span across every virtual museum project, from dragonflies and birds to scorpions and fish. His career has taken him to some really amazing parts of the world, including Botswana and Zululand, where he spent several years running a guiding business with Yana, his wife. And he now finds himself in the Karoo, where he and Yana are establishing a guiding venture called Karoo Plains. And I think some of us here have had the privilege of spending time there with Ryan and Yana, and just learning about the incredible ecosystems which converge in that part of the world. Ryan's interests within the natural world are quite diverse, but he's got a soft spot for the small things. Dragonflies, dung beetles, lacewings and spiders, and birds are just a few of the creatures that he's dedicated his time towards learning and teaching about, and of course biomapping. And that brings us to the subject of Ryan's talk this evening, which is the Neuroptera, which is maybe better known to us as the order of insects, which includes antlions and lacewings. And Ryan's going to be sharing with us a bit about the biology and life history of lacewings. And yeah, we're really keen to learn more about them. So Ryan, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. Over to you.
Yeah, welcome. And I hope you all enjoy the talk. It's really just an introduction. If anything, it's really the basics about these very interesting creatures. Order Neuroptera, most well known as the antlions and lacewings. So yeah, let's see what's in store. Just a quick outline. We're going to cover just an introduction to the order, and we'll talk about just a few of the selected families. There's 13 families in South Africa, as you'll see just now. So we'll just talk about a few of them. We'll look briefly at the characteristics and morphology, the food and feeding habits, reproduction and life cycles, ecological importance, and then a quick chat about lacewing map. Yeah. So without taking up any more time, let's move into the whole thing. So to start off with, as we know, order Neuroptera, antlions and lacewings are the most well-known in the group, but there are between 4,000 and 5,000 species worldwide, likely to be more than that in fact. And there are 16 known families in the order, of which 13 are known from South Africa, so that's quite an impressive amount. And the most well-known group, as we've mentioned, are the lacewings and antlions. However, owlflies and mantid flies are also very interesting members of this group. And there's a owlfly here on the bottom right hand of the screen. And Southern Africa has approximately 500 species of Neuroptera, and at least 415 of these are found in South Africa. And South Africa has a fairly large number of undescribed species too, so that total is sure to rise in future. And I think the dry western areas of Southern Africa are actually global hotspots for Neuroptera diversity. So yeah, where I'm living in the Karoo is really where I picked up my interest in these creatures, because we have actually found so many amazing ones here on the farm. So okay, I was gonna put this section on selected families at the end, but I think it will be easier to show you what some of them look like now, and then it will be perhaps easier just to see, to know what they look like will help understand more further into the talk. Okay, so just a few of the more conspicuous families. So the first one is Neuropteridae, the dusty-winged lacewings. We have 14 species of these in the region. All of them are very small. They are easily recognized by their powdery white substance that covers their body and wings. As you can see in the photo, the entire animal is covered in this powder. They are widespread and easily overlooked. There's not a lot of records of these on the Lacewing Map project, but it's probably because they're so small. The adults are pollinators and are typically found on flowering plants, and the larvae live on leaves and are important predators of mites and various other pest insects. And they are common in gardens and orchards. Yeah. And then we have Hemorrhobidae, which are the brown lacewings. There's 22 known species in the region from 7 genera. They're also small. Most are brown with variable darker markings, and they are found throughout southern Africa, once again easily overlooked due to their small size. The adults are also pollinators, and the larvae live on plants and are once again important predators of mites, aphids, scale insects, and the like, and also prominent in gardens and orchards. Then we have the Chrysopidae, which are the green lacewings, commonly called green lacewings. There's at least 79 species in the region. These are small to medium sized. Most are primarily pale green, but there's a few species that are yellow or brownish with darker reddish markings and so on. I've seen a couple that are pink and yellow as well. And they are widespread throughout South Africa and in fact much of the world. And the larvae are important predators of aphids and mites. Okay, so that's Chrysopidae. And then we'll move on to Neuropteridae, which are the thread, spoon and ribbon wing lacewings. There are at least 60 species in the region from 7 genera. Most are found in the arid regions of the Northern and Western Cape. They range from small to large. Adults have elongate beak-like mouthparts for feeding on pollen and nectar. So here you'll see on this photo, there's that little beak, and you'll see the lace or that modified hind wing that produces that streamer tail. The forewings are often clear and iridescent in most species, and you can see there in that photo as well. Beautiful iridescent wings. They're just amazing little creatures, these. And the hind wings are variously modified, often with elongate streamer thread or ribbon, flag, or even paddle-like tips. A number of these lacewings are quite localized and rare, and the larvae of many of them are poorly known. Here in the Karoo, they're very active in the early summer, and they often have to come to the lights at the house and in large numbers, and they really are beautiful. And then that brings us on to these strange members of the group, Mantispidae, commonly known as mantispids or mantid flies. There are at least 7 genera, well, there are 7 genera and at least 35 species in the region. Most are found in the wetter eastern parts and small to large sized. And the key standout feature of these animals is the raptorial forelimbs for capturing prey, hence the mantid reference in the name. They have very similar raptorial forelimbs to mantids. In fact, they look more like mantids than the rest of the order of Neuroptera. They look closer to mantids. The adults are obviously predatory, feeding on other insects. And the adults actually normally will wait around at flowers for insects to arrive. And the larvae are interesting in that they are largely parasitic and develop in the nests of spiders. Rain spiders, I believe, are one of their main hosts, where they feed on the spider eggs or on the young spiders themselves. And some of these also seem to imitate wasps. As you can see in this one with the banded yellow abdomen, looks at a first glance similar to a paper wasp. They're quite seldom seen, and there's also not a lot of records of them in the lacewing map. Yeah. And then Ascalaphidae, which are the owl flies, and this is a really interesting group, and there are at least 50 species in the region. They are widespread, but seldom found in large numbers. They are mostly medium-sized, and they are unmistakable due to their very long clubbed antennae, which are quite distinctive, as you can see in these two photographs with the antenna. The posture is also characteristic, and you can see they sort of stick the abdomen out at an angle away from the wings. And yeah, that's quite characteristic of owl flies. Most are crepuscular, so they're active at dawn and dusk. And the adults are predatory and capture other insects on the wing. They have extremely fast and rapid flight to grab their insect prey, and then they return to a perch to feed. Yeah, flight is swift and powerful. And the larvae are free living. They resemble those of antlions, which you'll see just now, but are dorsoventrally flattened, so from top to bottom, and have often got fringed projections along the sides of the body. And you can see one up here in this top photo in my hand, and you can see these sort of fringe projections, and that they don't live in pitfall traps or anything like that. They are free living, as I've said there, moving around freely. Then we have Myrmeleontidae, which are the antlions, the true antlions. This is the largest family amongst the Neuroptera in southern Africa. There are at least 50 genera and at least 180 described species in the region. There are many that await description. They are mostly medium to very large sized. And if you look at the size that I've given you there, the wingspan ranges from 26 to 160 millimeters. To put that into perspective, the largest dragonfly in Africa, the black emperor, has got a wingspan of 113 millimeters. So 160 is a huge insect. And yeah, they're very impressive, some of these big guys. Most are nocturnal and are attracted to lights. They've got prominent but short antennae. The adults and larvae are predatory and feed on other insects. And the famous antline pits are built by the larvae of some members of this family. However, most species have free-living larvae that live in loose sand. Okay. So yeah, that's just a selection of families that I'm showing you. That there's several others, but they're often groups that are very seldom seen. Just out of interest, you can see these are two of the bigger antlions. This one, Talpiridius capicola, is one of the hook-tailed antlions, and you can see that very distinctive hook claspers on the end of the abdomen. Okay, so moving on, the characteristics of the adults. You can see this is an owl fly with this characteristic angle of the abdomen and the long clubbed antenna. So the adults are very, very variable in size and appearance. They have soft exoskeletons with a somewhat leathery sort of feel. They have 3 pairs of legs and 3 body sections, which is of course typical of all insects. They have fairly large lateral, so on the side of the head, compound eyes, and they may or may not also have ocelli, which are small simple eyes between them. Most have long multi-segmented antennae. The antennae often broaden towards the tip or maybe clubbed in other species. You can see there's a typical antlion with an antenna that broaden towards the tip. Okay, further characteristics of the adults. We have all species have two pairs of similar sized membranous wings with conspicuous wing venation. When at rest, sorry, the wing venation is what gave the group the common name lacewings, because they have very, very intricate venation in those wings, much like lace, of course. So when at rest, most species hold the wings tent-like or roof-like at an angle down the length of the body, as you can see on both of these photographs. They don't typically rest with their wings outspread. Adults have strong chewing mouth parts, and the abdomen is elongate and has 10 segments, and the claspers may be present at the tip of some male abdomens, depending on the species. Many are typically weak or lazy flyers. Their flight looks weak or lazy anyway. Okay, so yeah, I think that's that, and this is just the basic outline of a large antlion, which is typical of the group. You can see, actually, at first glance resembles a dragonfly, but they have a number of key differences, which I'll talk about just now. But here you can see the large lateral compound eyes, the obvious multi-segmented antenna, the two pairs of roughly equal sized wings, and the long 10-segmented abdomen. All right, the larvae. So the larvae have a completely different appearance, of course, to the adults. You can see by these two here, they are very variable in size and appearance as well. And some of the large ones are around about an inch, 2.5 centimeters in length even. They can be quite massive. And the larvae have up to 7 simple eyes on each side of the head, or they may have no eyes at all. This depends entirely on the species. The huge jaws are the outstanding feature of all the larvae, of all the groups, and may be short or long, straight or curved. All larvae possess these elongated modified mouth parts. And this is where it gets quite weird and interesting, but they have no true mouth. So liquid food is sucked up by a pharyngeal pump in the throat through the jaws directly into the pharynx. And each jaw is effectively a sucking tube that's created by the mandible above and the maxilla below, with the two fitting together but separable. So yeah, very, very bizarre creatures. Most larvae have walking legs, although they're not very well developed. In a number of species, the legs are modified for burrowing. The terminal segments, the terminal segments of the abdomen or the body are modified into an anal foot, which is used for locomotion. And the anal foot also functions as a spinneret. So the spinneret is used during its life cycle to produce a pupa in order to pupate into the adult. And in certain families, the abdomen has special bristles for holding debris for camouflage. Most of them have got stiff or setae, which are stiff hairs, effectively bristles, which are acutely sensitive to even the smallest of vibrations. Another interesting thing is that they have no anus, which is fantastic because I mean, it's just so crazy. They survive in this larval stage for up to 3 years, and they have no anus. So waste products are then stored in the abdomen and are expelled as a whitish fecal pellet after emergence as the adult. So it must be quite a relief. Okay, I think that's that. The morphology of the larvae, you can see here with the sort of more close-up image. You can see the simple eyes. So they each have these little simple eyes on the side of the head. You can see in this one the antenna. So they do have some antenna as the larvae, but much reduced compared to adults. You can see the specialized bristles along the sides of the body, which of course help to detect vibrations. But in some of the antlions, those bristles are also used to anchor the creature into the sand while it's fighting ants and other insects. And over here at the back, you can see the anal foot. Okay, so this was a commonly, in the group, these are the two insects that really get confused, is the antlions, the true antlions, and dragonflies. And we occasionally see this on the virtual museum where people mistakenly send in antlions into the dragon or the Odonata map, the dragonflies and damselflies project. And it's quite an easy mistake to make if you're not sure. So I'll just put a quick thing together here. Adult antlions most resemble dragonflies and damselflies. And they have a few similarities physically. So when you look at them, you can see the general shape is quite similar. They both have long, conspicuously veined wings and elongate abdomens consisting of 10 segments. So there's a few, you can definitely see the similarities between them on those two photos. But there are some differences. These are the important ones to note, in that the antennae differ. As you can see here, the antlion has got, they're not huge antennae, but they're still quite obvious and conspicuous on top of the head. Whereas in dragonflies, they do have antennae, but they tend to be small, little stiff bristles, one on each side of the eyes there. And so that's one of the major differences. The other thing is the eyes. Even though antlions have got fairly large eyes, they're still tiny in comparison to those of dragonflies, which also in most groups of dragonflies, barring one, the eyes actually converge and connect, touch in the middle of the head, whereas they don't come anywhere near each other on the antlions. And then another difference is in the wing venation. Both groups, orders also have very intricately veined wings. However, in the antlions and lacewings, they take that intricate venation to another level, hence their name, lacewings. And they have probably several times more, 10 times more venation, or little blocks of veins in between the veins in the wings, and much more intricate. And then another difference is in the coloration. And while yes, some of the female dragonflies may be sort of colored in the browns and grays and so on, most of the males are brightly colored in blues and greens and reds and so on. Whereas in antlions and lacewings, they're seldom colorful in that sense. They're often very beautifully patterned, as you can see here, but they seldom show, or seldom if ever show, any bright sort of gaudy colors. And further differences just quickly between them is more behavioral. The flight, dragonflies and damselflies have got a very fast direct flight, whereas the antlions and lacewings have a slow, lazy, very distinctly flappy flight. Also, the activity periods differ. Most species of Neuroptera are nocturnal, the vast majority anyway, whereas dragonflies and damselflies are day active, diurnal. A few are crepuscular in the evening, dusk, but They're not nocturnal. And their life cycles, of course, also differ. The Neuroptera life cycles happen on land, whereas dragonflies, as we all know, the larval stage lives underwater. Okay. So occurrence, where do they live? So neuropterans are found pretty much all over the world, in all temperate and tropical parts of the world. They're actually found in quite large numbers in dry desert and semi-desert regions where they reach quite high diversity. I believe the highest diversity is found in the South American rainforests, but the African desert and semi-desert regions are actually not far off in terms of diversity. And so they are found throughout Southern Africa or South Africa in most habitats, except for in the water, really. The wetter eastern regions and the drier western regions hold comparable numbers of species. However, there's a very high degree of endemicity in the arid west of the country. So particularly the Northern and Western Cape, where yeah, a lot of species there are found nowhere else. So yeah, proper hotspots for Neuroptera diversity. So this little guy in the image is another species of owl fly, Emelambrotus, and again you can see that very conspicuous posture. Okay, activity periods. So the majority of species, as I mentioned just now, are nocturnal. Most are active in the warmer summer months, which is spring and summer in South Africa. They may be active year-round in some of the tropical and subtropical regions. And activity is often in response to day and night temperatures, humidity, rain, cloud cover, and light intensity. Moon phases in particular. I've discovered here in the Karoo, when I have my lights out to collect records, there's a distinct drop in abundance on full moon and bright moon evenings compared to dark nights. And generally humid evenings before and after rainfall, when it's quite nice and dark, are the best conditions to find them. Yeah. So you'll see this one on the right hand side. It's sitting here photographed in the daytime, but it actually was resting amongst some tall grass, and it was flushed out before I managed to photograph that. So he wasn't actually actively out hunting. Okay, so food and feeding. How do neuropterans find and capture their prey? So adults have got keen eyesight and a good sense of smell, and most prey is captured in flight. This was one that we found here at on the farm during one of the bio bashes we held, and it captured this fly while at the lights, and proceeded to devour it, but it was quite brutal. The fly kept buzzing and trying to fly away while this antlion just ate it alive. It didn't bother trying to kill it or anything like that. And once the antlion was finished feeding, the fly just sort of walked around on the wall and yeah, died sort of half an hour later. It was quite savage to watch, but very fascinating. Okay, the larvae. The larvae find food by using an acute sensitivity to vibrations found because of the hairs on their body in particular. And prey is normally captured by ambush in most species, pitfall traps in a few groups of antlions, or actively chased down, like in some of the lacewings. So here we go. This is a photograph of the larvae of an owl fly, and these ones are free roaming. This particular one is from northern KwaZulu-Natal, where I found it in leaf litter in the forest, and yeah, it's quite a big brute of an insect, and looks like a really serious predator. Okay, what do the adults eat? They feed on a wide range of smaller flying and non-flying insects, but mostly flying insects. And a few also feed on pollen and nectar. So here's another one. This is one of the treehole antlions, Cymothalus, I believe is the Latin name. Beautiful, delicately built antlions, but this one actually captured another different species. You can see just the last bit of the abdomen left there after he'd eaten the entire creature. So yeah, they can also be quite cannibalistic. Prey is mostly captured in flight and consumed at a perch, so while perched. And then, yeah, what do the larvae eat? Well, the larvae feed mostly on running or crawling insects, especially aphids, mealybugs, thrips, ants, caterpillars, and the list goes on. But these are some of the key ones because of their pest status. So, you know, they're important control agents for these insects. Larger species can capture beetles and other largish insects. And there are records, I believe, of some of the larger larvae from some of the big antlions that have even been able to capture geckos and even small adders, snakes. Although sadly they couldn't extract their jaws and died in the process. But yeah, it shows that they're quite voracious predators. So these are pictures I got off the virtual museum, and you can see this is from the species the genus is Galaphrus, one of the largest antlions. I think its common name is the Kalahari phantom antlion. Really spectacular species, and it has these large free living larvae. They live in the sand and sort of actively move around, grabbing whatever they encounter in the dunes. So some of the larvae, like for example, the pit building antlions, the larvae have actually been recorded capturing adults that are busy trying to lay eggs in the same area. So yeah, cannibalism is definitely a big part of, or at least a part of the biology of these Neuroptera. Okay, we can't really do a talk on antlions without talking about the pits. So the well-known antlion pits are only constructed by a few genera, including Quetta and Myrmeleon species. This is a species of Myrmeleon that you can see here. They've got a distinctive sort of head shape and posture there, where the head sort of sits like a T at a different angle from the body. It just seems to, and they have just a distinctive. Once you get used to looking for them, you'll see this distinctive posture of that group, that genus. And then there's a pit, typical antlion pit. And so the pit is normally constructed in dry, loose sand. The larvae move backwards. So they can actually, there's a myth that they can't move forwards. That's not true. They prefer to move backwards, but they are capable of going forwards as well. And so to build this pit, they start off at a point and then move backwards in an ever tightening spiral, all the while flicking sand out of the hole with using its head and jaws. It starts in a clockwise spiral, or at least from what I've seen and watched and some of the videos I've seen, they tend to start in a clockwise spiral, but at one point they change direction and move anti-clockwise. They then do a few turns until they then switch again back to clockwise before finishing the pit. So if you can see the pointer, it sort of starts off in a wide arc and then come in closer like that, and then it sort of spins out again, and then tries to get a bit smaller before it's going again into a tighter and tighter circle, all the while flicking out sand, and yeah, you end up with this pit here. And the whole process takes just over an hour to complete. If you're interested to see, there's actually a video on YouTube where you can actually watch the whole thing. It's the video itself is about 40 seconds. It's all sped up to show the whole process, but it's very fascinating to see how they do that. Yeah, just about an hour to complete. So when ants or other small insects approach the edge of the pit, the soil slips and they slide down into the trap. It's a bit like an avalanche. The larvae seizes the victim in its jaws and injects a paralyzing neurotoxin, which is more like a digestive fluid, or what do you call it, like a saliva type thing, I guess, which is somewhat toxic. And once that toxin will help to liquefy the internal juices or bodily fluids of the prey, and after that it will suck out the body fluids. If the prey manages to avoid sliding all the way down and tries to climb back out of the conical pit, the antlion flings sand at it very accurately, and it causes the ant to lose its grip and fall down to the bottom, where it's then grabbed. The antlion can capture prey much larger than itself. Using forward-pointing bristles on its body, these help to anchor it firmly into the sand, so that a violently struggling creature that's even double the size or even larger, it doesn't have the strength to pull the antlion out. And once it is finished feeding, the antlion flings the ant's lifeless body out of the trap, using exactly the same motion that it does to flick out the sand while it's busy digging the pit. So yeah, really interesting creatures, but just important to bear in mind that it's only a very few in the order that actually do this, just a few genera of antlions. Okay, the life cycle is another thing to look at, and antlions and lacewings have a hollow metabolic life cycle. So that is an insect that has a complete metamorphosis. That means it goes through the full range of egg, larvae, to pupa, to adult. And some of the other insects will have an egg, larvae, and straight into adult, such as dragonflies, for example. They do not have a pupa, but so the Neuropterans have the complete metamorphosis. So the egg, as I've said, hatches into a larvae, which bears no resemblance whatsoever to the adult. The larvae goes through 3 stages called instars, by shedding its skin and as it grows. During the 3rd larval instar, it spins a silken cocoon, forming a protective covering that will protect it during the pupal stage. It varies from family to family exactly. Some of the lacewings, I think, do this on plants, whereas in antlions and so on, this process happens in the sand. And this photograph on the right is one I found on Google, but it's the little instar inside this silken cocoon of an antlion. And here on the left, you can see the female antlion busy using her abdomen to lay eggs in soft, loose sand. Once development is complete, the new adult will emerge. And the adult, so this is research I was reading about, where I think this was done in Europe, but the average lifespan that they found was 20 to 25 days. But some adults can live for up to 45 days. I think there's a lot of conjecture with this, because I think in larger insects typically can live longer than small insects, and it could also have a lot to do with climate and so on. But as a rough guideline, I suppose you could say anywhere from 20 days to to a couple of months. It's probably the normal expected life range of an adult. Obviously, the larvae can live up to 3 years in their pits or creeping around in the leaf litter. So fairly long-lived insects in total. Yeah. So studies have found that male, sorry, I'm just trying to get my view back here. Studies have found that male Uraleon nostras, which is a European species, has been found to produce volatile compounds. So researchers believe that these may function as aggregation pheromones to attract females, and they believe that this likely applies to many other members of the order. So yeah, it's probably prevalent in the South African species too. Mating adults hang from a perch with raised wings, as you will see here. This is one we've found here on the farm, and the larger female above with the male hanging below. So the large female clings to the perch and the male attaches his tail to hers. He then hangs below her, suspended only by his genitals. And the observations have shown copulation can last for almost 2 hours. So yeah, I think that just about covers reproduction. Yeah. And the ecological status of these, or ecological importance. Neuropterans play a vital role in the ecosystem. Neuropteridae, which is this group here on the bottom left with the long streamer tails and the ribbon tail lacewings, they are valuable pollinators in dry regions. So in spring and early summer here in the Karoo, you'll see them. They obviously, as I said, come to the lights in large numbers, and but you may also see them occasionally in the day on flowering plants, and more commonly at night on flowering plants in good numbers. So they are major pollinators in dry regions. Neuroptera are important in food chains as both predators and prey for a variety of other organisms, from birds to small mammals, other insects, and so on, spiders. And scorpions. We actually, I was on a walk a little while ago, and we found a large larvae, maybe a couple of centimeters long, that had been captured, antlion larvae that had been captured by a scorpion. Although it looked like it was quite a struggle, but the scorpion did win the battle. But yeah, so big part of the food chain. The larvae of green lacewings have been recorded to eat up to, oh, sorry, I've skipped the point there. The larvae of many families are vital predators of aphids, mealybugs, ants, and mites. These are particularly the small lacewings, that those first few families that we discussed in the beginning of the presentation, the green lacewings, brown lacewings, and so on. They are vital predators of aphids, mealybugs, and so on. The larvae of green lacewings have been recorded eating up to 200 aphids a week. So yeah, they are hugely important in agriculture, especially. Green lacewings are actually effectively used as biocontrol agents on crops to control pests in many parts of the world, and I believe they are sold wholesale in the form of eggs to be sort of just released out into the farm, and they're proven to be extremely effective. Many species are vulnerable to habitat fragmentation and pesticide contamination, and for this reason they're actually considered excellent indicators of environmental and habitat transformation, and include key species for identifying areas that require priority protection. And this we can see in parts of the west coast, the succulent Karoo, the Cedarburg Mountains. There's a couple of really localized species there where their habitats are already showing signs of fragmenting, and yeah. they are quite specific to their soil and so on, that they need the right habitats to thrive. And so, yeah, key indicators. Okay, and I think that brings us to
Ryan, I think your microphone is off.
Sorry, there was I've got some pop-up has blocked my view of my heading, and I couldn't see what I've written there. Can't get it to go away. Anyway, so the best way to find antlions and lacewings is to get them to come to lights, and household lights work just fine, but if you set up a specific I don't know why it's not working. Oh, there we go. So you can set up a sort of a white sheet with a fluorescent light, and you can see this is not from one of my pictures. This is an awesome selection of insects attracted there, but that's a really effective way to get antlions and lacewings and other nocturnal insects, to find them for collecting or for finding records. So ultraviolet and fluorescent white lights work best. If you're trying to attract them, try to stay away from yellow lights and red lights. They do very little for insects. Ultraviolet is definitely the best, but hard on the eyes, and it's not really something that you want in your house. You will be inundated quite quickly. So I use a fluorescent white light, and I find that works very well. There's a UV. I've also got a UV light like this, but my fluorescent tube is died, so I need to find a new one. Yeah, manted flies and lacewings can be found on flowering plants. If you search where a lot of pollinating insects are coming in, bees, wasps, flies, and so on, search around those flower heads, and you may be lucky enough to find manted flies and some of the little lacewings. And antlion pitfall traps are everywhere, wherever you can find dry, loose sand, and they're particularly prevalent underneath trees, sort of at the base of the tree trunks, or where there's rock overhangs, against walls, places like that, where there's an amount of protection from rain and so on. So it tends to remain very dry in those areas. That's perfect habitat for antlion pits. And then, yeah, walking through long grass can often flush out adult antlions and certain species of owl flies. In fact, it's a really good way to find some of the larger species, just walking carefully through the grass and seeing what you flush out. And yeah, they're all quite easy to photograph too. Antlions and lacewings at lights tend to be easily approached most of the time. And yeah, no problems in photographing them. So that brings us to the next point, which is lacewing map. And it's my final point, really. And so, yeah, we want to ask you to please support Lacewing Map and contribute your records. You can find the Lacewing Map project on the virtual museum. And this project is done in collaboration with Dr. Mervyn Mansell, who does all the IDs, and he's great. He gives you very interesting feedback on all your species and a little bit of a bio on each species. And Mervyn is a world leader in lacewing research. Yeah, Lacewing Map helps to provide valuable information on the distribution and phenology of lacewings, and allows the project to generate up-to-date distribution maps for these species. And currently the database consists of 12,898 specimen records provided by Mervyn, and up to date, well, currently as of today, it was 4,787 photographic records that have been contributed by citizen scientists on the Lacewing map project, and that's grown hugely. I think the Les sent out a PDF giving updates on the Lacewing map project, I think towards the end of 2019, and I believe it was 2,400 and something photographic records. So in under 2 years really, it's doubled. So that's shows that there's a lot of progress, but we welcome as many, or obviously we want as many records as possible, so please support the project and contribute your records. Yeah, thank you. Hope you enjoyed it, and see if there's any questions.
I think there were a couple of questions in the chat from Julia. There was one asking, do you have any idea how the larvae inject toxins? Are the jaws also fangs, or do they use another mechanism?
Yeah, the jaws effectively work like fangs. So it's once it grabs the prey, the salivary, the toxins are injected and then absorbed into the body of the prey, and then once it's liquefied, sucked back out again. Okay. Yeah.
Great. And then the second question was, have you done any rearing of antlions?
No, not yet. Something I was thinking about doing, but haven't quite got into that yet. I'm quite interested to try though.
Okay, and then Laban had a question asking, are they related to dragonflies or not? And how good are they in biological control of pests as compared to other species or other families like ladybird beetles and parasitic wasps?
No, they're not really related to dragonflies. They're in completely separate orders, and and I would say they are as important, if not more important, than many other insects for biological control, particularly those green lacewings and so on, for controlling aphids and so on. So yeah, I think certainly comparable to most of the other important insect groups for pest control.
So Ryan, remind us how many specimen records there were. It was about 14,000, something that order.
Sorry, say again, Les?
The total number of specimen records that was about 14,000.
I think it was about 12,000 something.
Okay, 12,000. So those 12,000 records represent, what can I say, Mervyn's life work, but it's more or less his life's work on this thing. So he did a lot of collecting himself. He assembled every record of a lacewing, every specimen in a museum in the world, African Neuroptera, and that's 12,000 records. And as citizen scientists, in next to no time, so that's a century's work, more than a century's work. In next to no time, citizen scientists have contributed over 4,000 records. It's pushing, well, it's a lot of records. So so the rate at which we are contributing records exceeds what was ever achieved at any time of history. So Mervyn is kind of gobsmacked at our efforts and really impressed at what we're achieving. So when you go collecting, of course, you go collecting in the best places, but as citizen scientists, we're contributing records from all over the place. So he's getting a much bigger geographical spread of records than what he'd ever get going collecting himself, or professionals doing the collecting. So he is hugely impressed at what we've achieved in Lacewing Map.
There's one more question.
Oh yes, yeah. Sorry.
She's just asking, are there many records in the virtual museum outside of South Africa for Lacewing Map?
Yes, they are from various parts of Africa, but the vast majority are from South Africa, of course. But yeah, there are records from several other regions of Africa.
And there are no lacewing mappers. So there's nobody who actually just focuses on lacewing map. Like there are people who describe themselves as reptile mappers or bird fixers or lacewing lepi mappers. So so all the lacewings in the virtual museum are a bit of a bycatch from everything else. So you know, it's just amazing what we've actually managed to accomplish together.
Okay, so I think that's all of the questions. There's nothing else coming in on Facebook. Just as a quick reminder, Ryan has spoken at a couple of citizen science hours previously, and as always, you can find the links to those talks on the BDI YouTube channel, and this talk will ultimately be available there as well. So yeah, I think that's our time for this evening. It is 8:30. But thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.